All right, let's call to order the Regional Transportation Commission meeting for Friday, December 16th with a roll call.
Okay. Christina Swallow,
Here.
Vaughn Harton,
Here.
Ed Lawson,
Here.
Bill Thomas,
Here.
Devin Reese, Hillary Sheevy, and Adam Spear,
Here.
and we have a quorum.
Okay, now the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Mayor, would you lead us?
Is that me?
That's you.
I invite you to lead me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us on to special recognitions, 1.3.1. Proclamation recognizing Bob Lucy for his efforts as the former RTC chair, vice chair, and RTC chair. And I see Mr. Lucy's, yep, we're gonna read you a proclamation, then we're gonna embarrass the heck out of you, so. Oh, we got a video first.
Yeah.
It occurs to me, we don't need to embarrass you after seeing that suit.
Nor could we, right?
Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the board, I wanted to read this proclamation. Whereas Bob Lucy was selected by Washoe County to serve on the Regional Transportation Commission Board in 2015, and whereas Bob served as RTC Vice Chair in 2018 and served as Chairman 2019 to 2020, and whereas he wears very colorful suits during the holiday season to show his down-to-earth personality and sense of humor, and whereas he has been a tireless advocate for pedestrian safety initiatives that have saved lives in our neighborhoods, and whereas he continually strives towards propelling Washoe County as a regional leader in growth of our business community as we diversify our economy, and whereas he prioritized his focus on the quality of life for families in our community rather than corporations, and whereas he served in our community in his roles as RTC Commission and Chair with distinction, it now resolved I, on behalf of the Mayor Ed Lawson, Chair of the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, do hereby designate today, December 16th, 2022, as Bob Lucy Day. I urge all residents to join the RTC of Washoe County in recognizing the substantial contributions he has made to improving our regional health, safety, and quality of life.
Chairman, thank you. Director, commissioners, it is obviously a different feeling being on this side of the dais for the first time in a while. But it has been an honor to serve RTC, one of my favorite boards, and really one of my favorite duties I've had as a commissioner and working with my colleagues. A lot of great memories, and we've done a lot of great work at this, and it has been one of my favorite boards to work and serve on. I think really realistically, I say it all the time, and I've been very lucky in the recent election of Governor-elect Lombardo to serve as the transportation chairman and infrastructure for his transition committee. And I remember all the wonderful things that we have done and what we can see the benefits from, and where we have gone as a community, as a state, to provide safety, good public transit, quality roads. Washoe RTC is a leader amongst our state and amongst the country about how we go about making things happen and getting things done for our community, and it has been a real honor. And I want to thank you, Mayor Lawson, Mayor Sheevy, Councilmember Reese, I should say Vice Mayor Reese, and Chairman Hartung. It's been an honor to serve with all four of you and all the members of the board. And Director Swallow, thank you so much for all your work. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Get a quick picture? Gonna go down? Yep. Let's get a picture.
He's coming up. You're going down, he's coming up.
Yeah, you come up. Come up.
You want me to come up there?
Yeah.
Is it easier?
I think it's better. I don't know, I like it better.
Hang around for a second. I think a few board members want to say something.
That's another, yeah.
Yeah, it got lost in the mail.
Chairman, my apologies. I have to depart pretty quickly. I have another board in Carson City I have to chair, so I'm one of my last duties. So,
Okay, any
Chairman,
comments?
Yeah,
Yes.
no, just real quickly, Mr. Lucy, Commissioner Lucy, Chairman Lucy, nobody has worked harder than Bob. There's a lot of people who have worked as hard, but nobody has worked harder than Bob. And you saw the pictures up there in Washington, D.C. and other places. Chairman of the NACO Transportation Board, which is the National Association of Counties, a very, very high honor. We cannot begin to thank you enough for all the hard work. And it's obvious why Governor-elect Lombardo has put you in this position, because since you came on 8 years ago, you have worked tirelessly and really you have become an expert in the field. And so thank you so much, and we look forward to see what you're going to do.
thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Lucy, first of all, congratulations for your number of years of service. I was not able to be there the other day during your last commission meeting, but I was able to watch, and it was pretty incredible to see the grace and outpouring of love for you there. I wanted to also say thank you to Megan for sharing you with all of us all these years and your family. There was a quote that was read a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it would be fitting to read it again briefly for you, but it's a famous one by Teddy Roosevelt, and I thought it was particularly appropriate for you. And it says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end of triumph the high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be without those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And Commissioner Lucy, you and I have had our ups and downs, as we are wont to do in life, but always in friendship, and great friendship indeed. So thank you for that. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
All right, I'm not going to be nearly as elegant as you are. I just want to tell you I love you. Thank you for your friendship. Some of the best moments that I've had in my political life have been with you that I will never, ever forget. You know, I've just been very fortunate. We have like sort of a brother-sister relationship.
Yeah.
And you've been through a lot, and you've just been also there for me whenever I needed you most. So thank you so much.
My honor.
And I miss you. I miss you.
My honor, Mayor.
And I'm just going to say thank you. It's 8 years we spent together on a lot of boards, and you're always a class guy, so thank you for that. I wish you well in your future endeavors,
Thank you.
and Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas to all of you, and thank you. It's been an honor to serve with all of you. You really are friends, not just colleagues, but friends, and I do think of you as family. Thank you very much. All right. Have a wonderful day, ladies and gentlemen. I'll let you get back to your business.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay. Let's move on to 1.3.2, recognition of Security Officer Joseph McGuire for his efforts on December 11, 2022 at Centennial Plaza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director Thomas, and Commissioners. Good morning. My name is Rob Reeder. I'm the Security Safety Administrator for RTC. It's my pleasure this morning to share a great story of excellent work that, in my view, saved the life of a toddler at near our Centennial Plaza station just this last week. I just ask that Security Officer Joseph McGuire from Allied Universal please join me up here. This past Sunday, Officer McGuire was doing his job patrolling around the outside of the Centennial Plaza transit station at 3:20 in the morning. It's snowing, below freezing, and he hears the cries of a small child, a toddler. 3-year-old Megan was outside behind the Seagull Suites Motel right by the Nugget, standing out in the snow, only wearing her underwear, crying for help. Officer McGuire heard that, went to her aid. She came running across the street, needing some help, telling him, "I lost my mommy, I don't know where she is." He quickly took her into the security office, called 911, and while he waited for Sparks Police and REMSA to show up and provide assistance, he immediately warmed her up by putting a spare work shirt on her. And while they looked at her and tried to determine why she was out and the circumstances for why she'd be out at 3:20 in the morning with no clothes on, essentially. He provided some food out of his own lunch for her, further provided a piece of clothing from his own children's clothing that he had out in the car while a Sparks officer kept an eye on her, put a onesie on her. I wondered where the heck he had that, how he got it. But sure enough, and then put on some cartoons for her to watch on his own cell phone. And it took about 2 hours for her to be evaluated in terms of REMSA having a look at her, but more importantly for Sparks PD to determine the circumstances of why she was out and to make sure that it was safe for her to go back to her parents. She was reunited with her mom at about 5:30 in the morning. So for 2 hours, this officer provided comfort and care. And that's work above and beyond. Great work. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Megan's alive today because of him, so it's something to be great.
You want to say anything?
Yeah. This is why you carry a onesie around in your car.
Exactly. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate all you guys. I thank God that I was doing the round when I was, and I came across her. But yeah, I'm just grateful I came across her when I did. I don't know what would happen to her.
Sounds like you have a little experience in being a great dad.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is this your family back here?
It is.
Hello. You should be so proud.
Yeah, let's get a picture with him.
We would love to get a picture with you. Thank you for what you've done. That's an incredible story.
Thank you.
I bet you were just shocked.
Oh, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So never question why he's carrying onesies in the car, right? It was meant to be. Who knew, right? Who knew? There's a Twilight Zone, it's called What You Need. You remember that one? No. It's a- This way, this way. Everybody, yep, everybody's got a slide this way. Keep going. There we go. Put it on backwards.
Thank you so much. Probably saved a few pictures for you.
The guy who It's a good one. Is there any water down there?
Okay. Now we're going to do our Keolis Driver of the Month, Miss Bertha Renee Dunlap.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Phil Pumphrey, General Manager Keolis. Our driver couldn't make it this morning, but her name is Renee Dunlap. She was born in Texas, and she's been a fixed operator for RTC since 2005. She's a mother of three, enjoys spending time with her family, and she likes to take her youngest grandson to the park in her spare time. And for the record, her on-time performance for last month was 97.6%. So we appreciate her efforts, and we're going to thank her appropriately back at the office, but sorry she couldn't make it today.
Thank you. And we'll move on to our MTM Driver of the Month, Mr. Burl Carl. Burl, are you here?
What did they receive for being driver of the month? Like what?
I think it's $1 million cash prize, free house, and I couldn't tell you. I can't tell you for sure. Pretty sure it's not $1 million. All right, let's move on to public comment. Ms. Donna Klontz.
I think those are the ornament earrings that you're talking about. Are those ornament earrings? You wanted to know where mine were. They see, she's got them.
Happy holidays, everybody, on the commission. I apologize, I've been having to stand in the back of the room with my phone in my hand because I am supposed to be, and I am, on a Teams meeting with the Commission on Aging right now at the same time. So, sorry. So I'm going to do my public comment and then go finish that one up. I passed out some information for the commission today. You've got 3 items there. One of them is a flyer that describes the resource fairs that we're running. There was a small amount of money left over from the Hello Project grant that was received here from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and they granted $13,000 to me and Larry Weiss because we had helped them with some of the resource fairs during the year that they were holding them at 9th Street Senior Center on Saturdays. We thought that was a really good way to reach those seniors who are not techie people. They do not use smartphones. They don't use computers. They need to get all their information about what's going on from written documents, flyers on the walls, word of mouth from other seniors, television, radio, those kinds of things. And so I wanted you to take a look at Senior Spectrum. There are articles in there that a lot of us write as free authors. I write one every month for just elder information. Larry Weiss does one for kind of healthy senior information because he is a PhD in gerontology. And other kinds of things. And so I wanted to suggest to the RTC that some of your communication dollars could go to Senior Spectrum. I would love your team to contact Connie McMullen at Senior Spectrum and do something monthly. It is so important to get outreach to the senior community that is not connected about the wonderful services that you have, especially the flex rides that are starting to happen all over the county. They don't know about it. So part of what we're doing at these resource fairs is we have Susie Trinidad and her great team showing up with a flex ride van at the library. Right now we just finished 2 of them at Sparks, and we're about ready to do a couple more at Northwest Library, and then we'll go to South County, and then we'll go back probably to North County. We're trying to reach seniors in the areas that typically there aren't any senior centers or any places that they can come to meet each other and to get information about what's going on. So we're using this grant to do these resource fairs, and we'll be doing some more activities with it until June. That's when our time runs out. So. I know you do the 2 minutes on Colo. Maybe something, especially for seniors, there could be done as well. Am I out?
Yep.
Good. All right. That was
Donna.
the main thing I want to let you know about. Thanks.
That's a great suggestion. I
Thanks.
appreciate that. All right, we're in a public comment. Anyone in the public wishing to comment at this time? Okay.
Can we go back? I think they misunderstood to 3.4. They are here.
3.4.
Yeah, it's the MTM employee.
Yeah. Oh. 1.34. Well, okay, well, let's bring the MTM driver back. I'm sorry. How did I miss that? Oh, oh.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rutherford. I'm the operations manager for MTM Transit. And with me, I have Burl Carl. He is our employee of the month for November 2022. Burl joined us in April 2018 and has an excellent safety record, is a reliable driver, and is always bringing forth information to help improve scheduling or suggestions for RTC access. He has had no complaints, negative iDrive events, And during the month of November, Burl is an asset to MTM as he embodies our mission, values, and vision of every trip is important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations.
Do they receive anything? Do they get like a gift card? I mean, I feel like we should give like gift cards or something.
They do, I think.
Yep, we do. The Employee of the Month gets a gift card plaque and then also another mention in our safety meetings.
Okay,
Very good.
all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Burl, appreciate it.
We gotta get a picture?
Yep.
Yeah. We're getting our exercise up here.
10 steps at a time, right?
Okay. All right, we went through public comment. Let's go to approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
A motion by
Second.
Commissioner Hartung, second by Ms. Hill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Consent items. Anyone wishing to pull a consent item? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by Ms. Shivi, second by Mr. Hartung. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. On to public hearing. We're doing a public hearing regarding the approval of Amendment 4 to the FY 21 through 25 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, the RTIP. Adopt a resolution approving Amendment Number 4 to the RTIP.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, all. Graham Dollarhide, Senior Planner with RTC for the record. And today we'll be covering the proposed Amendment 4 to the FFY 2021 to 2025 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. Just a brief overview of the document itself and the requirements associated with it. It's a 5-year program of projects. It's federally required. It advances projects from our long-range document, the Regional Transportation Plan. It's a necessary step in the project development process, but certainly not the final one. Complete project details are not typically available until after full design and public participation activities have taken place. And particularly for new projects, they're typically in the early stages of their development and don't typically have the full slate of details available upon incorporation into this document. So as I mentioned, this is the fourth amendment to the FFY 2021 to 2025 RTIP, which was originally adopted March of 2021. This document is required to be updated at least every 4 years RTC typically does that about every other year, and we do anticipate a full update, a fully new document, spring of 2023. So that one would be presumably be called the FFY 2023 to 2027 RTIP. But again, this is the fourth amendment to the current iteration. I'll mention too that the projects incorporated into this amendment, none of them required a transportation conformity analysis, which is essentially an air quality analysis. None of them triggered the threshold, which is typically or primarily capacity, based on capacity. We opened our public comment period for this amendment December 9th, closed yesterday. Today will be a public hearing for that as well. We did advertise this through our usual media outlets in the newspapers, including a Spanish language newspaper and on the website. We also took it to our advisory committees. And I will mention that our advisory committees both did recommend approval. However, a couple of caveats that I'll point out for our TAC. They had invited NDOT to come attend the January meeting and speak to a little bit more of the project details, and as well as just their general process for incorporating projects into our RTIP. And then the CMAC recommended approval on the condition that additional details regarding these projects were presented to the board here today. So I'll be doing that here shortly. Before I get into that, I'll also mention that we did receive a public comment from Councilwoman Breckus yesterday evening. So that will be incorporated as part of the public record, and that has been distributed to you all as well. So, and then one last note, there have been a couple of changes since the agenda materials went out. The US 395 North Valleys Phase 1B project will be removed from this proposed amendment. There were some updates that NDOT received just recently, and they would like to incorporate this project into our next amendment, which we had already scheduled for the January meeting. We had some other projects that required incorporation into amendment, but those won't be ready until next month. So we will remove that from this amendment and incorporate that project into the next amendment. Additionally, there was another project, the Spaghetti Bowl Nugget Viaduct project, that the correct dollar amount was added to the project. However, it was not added in the correct phase of work. So I'll note that once I start diving into the details of all of the projects here. So changes to the to existing projects that were already in the RTIP. We had several that increased construction funding. Highland Avenue Railroad Crossing project recently advanced to 100% design, which altered the cost there. Our Lemon Drive Segment 2 project also adds a right-of-way phase, and then those construction costs increased as a result of an alternatives analysis report conducted internally. That's an RTC-led project. The Pyramid Way 3R and ADA project, again, design was advanced further along in that process, so that altered the cost. The I-580 South Reno preservation project, that incorporates a change in pavement strategy, including more advanced improvements to a structure within the project limits. The I-580 Peckham to Mill preservation project, that adds to the scope of work, which includes Plum Lane viaduct work and preservation treatment to 3 northbound bridges near the Spaghetti Bowl. We also had another project that increased funding for the new phase. This is the one that I mentioned previously, the Spaghetti Bowl Phase 2 Nugget Viaduct project. slightly different than shown in the agenda materials. The funds were mistakenly added to the design phase. Those were intended to be in a right-of-way phase, and so the design will remain at 5.1 million, and the right-of-way will be 72 million. So we will incorporate that adjustment before we actually submit this amendment in the electronic statewide transportation improvement program system. And then finally, for projects existing in the RTIP already, we just modified the schedule for the Washoe County School District Safe Routes to School program. That was simply to true up what was going on there. It was originally slated for FY22. The agreement wasn't actually executed until FY23, so we're just moving that to FY23 to true that up. New projects added to the RTIP include the Mount Rose Corridor Study Recommendations Phase 1 project. This will be for construction to implement the first phase of improvements based on a planning study that was recently completed. The initial project limits will be Callahan Road to Fawn Lane and will include intersection safety and pavement improvements. But as scoping progresses, this project is subject to future amendments. Sure.
I know Commissioner Lucy had really worked on this, and I'm going to overuse the word tirelessly, but I mean, he really did. He pushed hard on this. Define intersection safety. What do you guys, is it going to be are you going to do a lighted intersection? Do we know?
Those details are not available yet.
Signalized is what I mean? Okay.
Yeah, the treatment to be used at those intersections is not available yet, is my understanding.
Okay.
So yeah, subject to future amendments in the RTIP, as I mentioned.
All right, thank you.
Additionally, there's a few bridge projects. The I-80 bridge replacement project at West 4th Street. That'll be for the construction phase, as is the I-80 bridge replacement project at Mogul Road. Again, for the construction phase. The bridge replacement over the Truckee River in Lockwood on Canyon Lane, that is the design phase. And then finally, another I-80 bridge replacement project at Mayan, the construction phase. So as I mentioned, we're seeking approval of this Fourth Amendment. Please note that the changes that I mentioned to those two projects, the US 395 North Valleys project, which is being removed, and then the Spaghetti Bowl Nugget Viaduct project, which will just have those same dollar amount, same funds go into a different phase of work. With that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dollarhide, thank you for the excellent presentation. It's sometimes hard to follow which of the bridges we're talking about, so I just have some very specific questions about this, and it may be something for Ms. Swallow also to address. But as my understanding is that NDOT has confirmed that the Boomtown Garrison bridge replacement is in the state's transportation plan, I believe, with funding to be obligated by June of 2024. Is that project also in the 2021-2025 RTIP?
It is not.
Okay, what is the disconnect there? Can you help me understand that? I'm really just trying to address the concerns of the Verdi Mogul community, which really has been very vocal in my chambers and our chambers here at the city, and really believing that the transportation infrastructure needs of that community have not been met. And I understand that the number of bridges that we have in the north and the age of them really requires replacement at a particular time. So what can you say about that specific bridge?
Sure. So first I'll just mention that it is a requirement that this document include all federally funded projects and projects of regional significance regardless of funding source. This project at the moment does not have any federal funds tied to it. The regional significance could be, it's a bit of a gray area, so it's not technically required to be incorporated at this time, but I have spoken with NDOT, and They will be incorporating this project into our RTIP shortly. Those details will be based on a study that RTC is leading right now, the Verdi Area Transportation Study. So we have worked closely with NDOT through that process. It is coming to a close within the next month or two. And then beyond, once we have the recommendations from that study, NDOT will work with RTC closely on developing some more of the details of that project, and at that time it'll be incorporated into the RTIP.
And so, Mr. Dollarhide, so that I understand fully, the Verdi Area Transportation Study, when do you anticipate sharing that with this board?
I believe it's next month, but I'll let Dan speak to that.
Sorry, thank you, everyone. Dan Denges, Director of Planning, for the record. Just to follow up on your question, Commissioner Reese. So we are currently finalizing some of those project recommendations for that study. We had a very productive technical advisory committee meeting yesterday with a lot of our stakeholders. I don't have a pinpointed date yet, but I would say that study should be wrapping up in the next 2 to 3 months, at which time we'll present it to this board.
Well, I want to extend my thanks to you. I know the City of Reno staff has been very grateful for the technical working group and the work that's being done there. Also for NDOT, because I think there's incredible commitment from NDOT over these last many years on a number of these projects. I mean, we were together, most of us, I think, for the Spaghetti Bowl Express grand unveiling earlier in the week. And I thought that was a tremendous moment in progress for that particular section of roadway. And of course, we all want improvements to our roadways, and it's the timing, it's the nature of the funding source. So I appreciate the good work that you're doing, and I really do think NDOT and Director Swallow are very much leading this charge, and so that's been a very good thing for us to see from the City of Reno as well. So thank you also for RTC and NDOT for working so collaboratively. I know that some of the times the funding mechanisms make it harder for us to be excited about all of the projects, but these bridge replacements, especially as you start looking from West 4th to Mayan, it just seems like the logical progression. So I'm excited, and I will be sort of routinely asking questions specifically about Boomtown Garson. I live in the neighborhood, I don't use the interchange, but it is one that I get with some frequency questions about. So thank you.
Great, thank you, and we'll keep you up to date for sure. Thanks.
Mayor Sheevy?
Turn on your mic.
Thank you.
I think, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Great presentation. Thank
Thank you.
you. The only thing I didn't see up there, and maybe I missed it somewhere, do you have timelines on these?
Yes, it's in the agenda materials. It'll show the year of funding that they'll go into. So,
And do you have any idea, like dates specific or?
that project specifically is slated for FY25.
Okay, but the rest of them that you had?
Yeah,
All of those?
it's part of the agenda materials. It shows
Okay,
the.
but it's
FY.
like general, because usually we really like to sort of message as much as we possibly can. We always hear that you guys are not telling us enough, right? So, and I know you guys do that over here, but I think layering on top of our sort of, database that we have, I think honestly at the City of Reno, we can do a better job putting that information out there. I see you guys really pushing it, but that's what you guys do. But I think we can do a better job at the City of Reno. So thank you so much.
Sure.
Mayor Sheevy, may I just add one follow-up comment to that as well, is kind of as Graham was explaining, these projects really need to get programmed before they can progress kind of to that next phase. So a lot of times this is kind of like the starting point, and once those projects get through design, then kind of project-specific or project-level outreach happens, certainly with RTC, but NDOT does a really good job as well of kind of notifying those that would be the most impacted by some of these improvements and getting the word out.
Right, because I know usually they're like, okay, it's sort of generalized, but I think as we get closer, I mean, certainly we've seen it with like Midtown and things like that, right? So as we get closer, it just helps us a lot, when people really feel like they haven't been notified. We get that a lot. So if we just start to plan with you, that would be really helpful.
That'd be great. Any way we can help support, we're
Thank you
happy to
so
do
much.
so. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the safe routes to school plan, with the yield to pedestrian signs, where will these be? Do we have that outlined yet?
I don't know that those details are
Okay.
available, but I can find those out and get back to you on that.
Okay, and then do we work with Washoe County School District to develop what they want for the, I'm assuming these are projects we do annually with them?
The process is those funds, they do come through RTC as we do a call for projects and review applications and award, but from there, they go to NDOT for execution of an agreement, and depending on what type of project it is, if it's an infrastructure project, it has to go through their LPA process. So I believe that's where that project stands now. The agreement is executed, but it's going through the LPA process.
Great, and then we annually do these awards? I'm sorry.
That we're actually updating, hope to bring that next month, an
Okay.
update to this funding source.
Great.
But yeah, the timeline, it may be annual, it may be periodically. But
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, and I'd love the details on the locations if you have those.
Sure.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I will follow up.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hartung, you got anything?
No,
Okay.
I'm waiting for Pyramid to arrive
That's for another day.
on the art.
All right, any other comments, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very quickly for the board and the public, this is a process that is prescribed to us. So one of the things that we've noticed, and it's a hard thing to get past, is when we do these public hearings, normally people want details and information when you have a public hearing. The process as it works is we can't get to those levels of details till we have this initial approval of the funding to actually start. So I just, it's very obvious to me, the frustration of having a public hearing and all of you struggling to understand what exactly this thing is that you're being asked to approve. But in short, I would describe it as without this first step, we can't move to the next level of figuring out the details. So I just want to put that out there for the public also.
Okay. All right, anyone else? We good? All right, this is a public hearing. Open it up to the public for comment. Anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? All right, now I'm bringing it back to the dais and I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion by Mr. Hartung, a second by Mr. Reese. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, 6.1. Received a report on the FY22 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report of ACFR for the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County and authorize staff to submit documentation to the Nevada Department of Taxation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Christian Schoenlau for the record. I'm the Director of Finance and CFO for RTC. I'm here today with Scott Nickerson. He's our partner with Crow LLP, our audit firm. And we're presenting today on behalf of our Executive Director, Bill Thomas, to present our annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or ACFR, as it's commonly known. It has been provided to you in the board packet today. It's a lengthy document, so we didn't bring you a copy. The ACFR does more than just display the accounting for the previous year. It recaps the accomplishments of RTC over the prior year, our plans for the future, and analysis of economic conditions affecting those outcomes. The audit process itself ensures that RTC has regimented and implemented internal controls, and that the agency follows all applicable laws and federal guidance, and that we present our financial statements in a generally accepted method. Included in this year's ACFR is an award for excellence in the financial reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association for fiscal year 2021. This award recognizes the hard work of our accounting and finance team, dedicates over several months to complete these documents above our industry standards, and RTC has earned this award for 35 years. I'm confident that my team will continue this tradition in the years to come. And Mr. Nickerson and I are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the commission?
No pressure to continue. For, what, did you say 35 years?
It's a long-standing tradition, yes. We have a great team, though. It
Yeah.
literally takes months to do this, and they are fantastic.
Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm speaking on behalf of the board, but also I just want to, as Executive Director, thank the Finance Department team. We have a lot of financial resources that pass through RTC, and having an audit that reaches this conclusion, I think, should give all of us comfort. Sitting up here as the overseers of this function, that things are being done according to good procedures and practices. And for that, I'm very thankful to the staff.
Okay. We need a motion to accept this report.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second. Got it. Motion by Mayor Sheevy, a second by Mr. Hartung. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
6.2, approve the RTC federal priorities and provide direction accordingly.
See how this works. Good morning. I'm Paul Nelson, Government Affairs Officer for RTC. We've got the federal priorities for 2023. This is something that we do on an annual basis this time of the year, just to really zero in on the projects that we're really wanting to prioritize, especially on a federal level where we can look forward to some potential funding sources, whether that's through grants or earmarks or what have you. It also helps us out with working with our federal delegation so that they know what the main projects are that we're really focusing on. So there's 19 different projects and policies on this. We're going to focus on the 6 top priorities that we've got. The first one is the bus maintenance facility replacement. We'll have to eventually replace the Villanova facility because of phase 4 of the Spaghetti Bowl project. That's several years down the road, but we got to get a start on that. So this is a major priority because it'll be a large capital project, capital expense, and we're looking into funding opportunities like grants and allocations for transit capital projects. The next one is the Keystone Avenue Bridge replacement. This bridge over the Truckee River is aging, and it's structurally deficient and rated very poorly. You can see there's a lot of crumbling going on up there. You can see the rebar through the cracks of that bridge. It's not very accommodating for pedestrians and cyclists either, especially with about 20,000 cars that travel over this bridge every single day. Construction on the project is planned to begin in 2027. We're looking at different grant opportunities to pay for the project that costs about $75 million. The next one is the Lemon Drive Improvements and Resiliency Project. This is the second phase of Lemon Drive. It would widen the road from 2 lanes to 4 from Fleetwood Drive to Ramsey Way. It would also include improvements to mitigate flood issues. We're putting in for the Raise and Protect grants to hopefully fund this project. The Sierra Street Bridge replacement. This is another downtown bridge that's structurally deficient. It doesn't perform well during flood events either, and it also has a high risk during seismic events. So these bridges are not friends with earthquakes. This project is much less expensive than the Keystone project. It's fully funded, but not official yet. So we're going to leave this on as one of our top priorities for another year. And then hopefully at this time next year, we can take that one off. The plan is to start the project in 2025. The Sparks Boulevard project. Phase 1 is wrapping up early right now. Phase 2 will run from just north of I-80 to Bering Boulevard. The purpose of this project is to increase safety, add roadway capacity, and widen the roadway to make it better for pedestrians and cyclists. The cost of the entire project is $57.8 million, so federal funding would go a long way to paying for this project. And the 6th top priority is the Highland Ranch Parkway Pyramid Highway intersection. This is one of the fastest growing areas in our region. The plan would include an overpass and ramps and widen Pyramid Highway to 6 lanes. The project addresses congestion and safety. Right now, traffic is experiencing longer delays, so upgrades are warranted. And hopefully we can get something taken care of there soon, because we've all been on Pyramid where, especially at rush hour, where cars are backed all the way up to McCarran. So with that, I'll take any questions. Oh, just kidding. I've got a little more. There are also 4 additional priorities that we added this year. The first one is the Mount Rose Highway improvements. The roadway exceeds the statewide average for fatal crashes, so safety is the top priority here. Speeding is the biggest problem. NDOT's done a study where it shows 10 to 15 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. The project would make improvements to all modes of travel. The Sun Valley Boulevard corridor improvements are also new to the list. That's from Scottsdale Road to 7th Avenue, and it's also got a lot of pedestrian traffic, and it's one of the highest transit riderships that's not located on a BRT route. We also have, we've added Vision Zero Truckee Meadows improvements. That's a collection of multimodal transportation improvements in Reno Sparks and Washoe County. We're hoping to improve safety for all road users regardless of travel mode. The desired outcome is to reduce fatal and serious crashes, and we applied for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant to help fund these projects. And the last one that we added is the pavement preservation to our policy priorities. We'll work with local governments to identify federal funding opportunities for pavement preservation. This could have many benefits, not just for extending the road's life, but also for things like improving transportation safety and reducing carbon emissions. And that's the end.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Any questions? Ms. Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this. And on the Keystone Avenue Bridge replacement, constituents reach out to me quite often of, is this safe? And I just wanted to, for the record, clarify with the team that yes, it is safe to drive on. It looks bad, obviously, but we do annual, or does the state do annual inspections, and it does pass. We're just waiting on the funding to, correct this action. But it is something that we look at for safety, correct, annually?
Yeah, and I compare these old bridges to my old truck. It still runs great, but for how much longer? So
Right.
you got to start thinking about replacing it before it's too late.
Right, which is great. And aesthetically, it's concerning, but we're not too worried about folks' safety today.
Nope.
All right. And then on Mount Rose Highway, the county has a study that was pointed out to me when I was newly elected, and it's the Scenic Highway Study. And I just want to make sure that y'all have seen that and are looking at that as part of this planning, because there's a lot of, it's an older study, but there's a lot of great suggestions in there from that study. So I just want to make sure that's incorporated. I don't know if we look at those old documents.
Is that the NDOT study that goes from the roundabout up to, I think
No,
it's Monterey?
this is a county-led study, and I can
Okay.
send it to the team, but yes, a scenic corridor study of investments, and I just want to make sure those are also looked at because we haven't done them, but it's certainly something that we should look at doing since it is such an important scenic corridor of investments for people to stop and for trail connections and all of those kind of things, in addition to the public safety, obviously.
Yep.
But I can send it to the team if you'd like.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I'm sure they've seen it, though.
All right.
If I might just quickly, while we're
Yes.
talking about that, I know the NDOT study that we helped them with considered and included that document,
Oh,
but
good.
we'll confirm that.
Okay.
I think that was very much a part of what went into the mix for this most recent study.
I just hate for all the work to be done, even if it was like 5 or 10 years ago and it still was good work, and just want to make sure it's incorporated. So that's great. Thank you.
Understood.
And then I know this Sun Valley Boulevard corridor is just so important, and I'm just really thrilled that we're looking at it. So thank you so much. Those are all my comments.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Hartung?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to thank you guys for putting in, Mr. Thomas, the Highland Ranch Parkway and Pyramid Highway. The improvement of that intersection is essential, and I'm hoping that we're looking at a grade-separated intersection and an interchange there. And then commensurate with that, I'm hopeful that we can, as we look at that, it's really what the intersection needs, but it will also create other problems because it won't attenuate the flows, and then it'll build up elsewhere. So that's why we need to look at some of the other solutions and get them just at least on the document or soon to be on the document. How about that? And I also wanted to bring up Sun Valley Boulevard. I'm glad you guys have that on there. It's going to need some improvements, especially up at the top from essentially Highland Ranch Parkway to 7th Street to make that 4 lanes. There's, with 5 ridges it's going to push more traffic onto Highland Ranch Parkway and Sun Valley Boulevard. Ultimately, it's going that way. So I'm hopeful that we will also, when we start looking at Sun Valley Boulevard, we look at Highland Ranch Parkway as well, because that's a connector. And then I'm going to throw one other little twist into the soup here, because it really does need a little bit more flavor. And that is the O'Brien Pass, which is 7th Street that goes over to the backside of Golden Valley. That is that's an interesting road. And I don't know whether we've looked at the crash data on it. I was taking a ride along one day with our fire department, and there happened to be a motorcycle crash that day. And so I know that there's a good volume of traffic that goes through that, and there's some developments that are going on up at the top and et cetera. But we really do need to look at that connection between Golden Valley and Sun Valley. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, really quickly.
Go ahead.
I assume these have all been voted by the board. Is that typically, how does that work? No?
These have all been voted on by the board. Yes, for the most part, a lot of these are carried forward, but it really is important for the board to, really, this is just setting the priorities. So if I might, to give it reference, even answering the specific question by Commissioner Hartung, this is a process that's iterative, so every year we look at it and refine it. For example, on O'Brien Pass, to put that in the queue, we have to do an evaluation whether we want to use federal money or not, because with federal money comes a process that may or may not accelerate our ability to meet it. So we do that balance test between what we federalize and what we don't. But we also look for big, significant things that we think we're going to get community support for. So from the standpoint of moving this forward, we're asking you to approve these as priorities, but know full well, when we get to this point next year, there may be other things, or we can't always bring it back if the board says, we've changed our thoughts on what's important.
All right.
But we try to do our best to balance, amongst all parts of the community to cover as many things as we can. You'll see here it's pretty balanced selection of projects.
The one thing I feel like I don't see enough of is micromobility. I don't see that. And then also really kind of diving into the access for disabled community as well. Like, I think that, so I guess I'm curious because I'm, new on the board, and the majority of the board is now new, when we're going to sort of have a strategic plan and look at things like, I just think we typically think so car-centric and bus-centric and just like even along the river, I think, bicycle paths along the river and things like that. I just feel like, we could really take RTC in a very different direction, because I think for so long it has just sort of been in a box, and it hasn't been that, I don't know, exciting or sexy. I just think that we can add elements that are so people-centric and that can really resonate. And then how do you make transportation cool? How do you make people want to take transportation? I think there are ways to do that. So I would really like to dive in when we get the opportunity to talk about what are our new priorities, what does that look like as we move forward, to sort of step outside the box and be different. I just feel like for so long, I don't hear like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting, unless you're really, truly a transportation nerd. But we need to start thinking about transportation, how it affects people in their everyday lives and how it resonates, how it makes you feel, how it makes you interact with transportation. And I know we've got incredibly talented people on the RTC team that can do amazing and really, really cool projects. So I just want us to start thinking like, what can we truly be? So that's just what I'm saying is like with some of us that are new, the majority is new, like what does our new vision look like? And so that's why I was saying, has this been voted on by the board? Because I do think that there are probably different feelings and flavors as we move forward. And then also looking at what is our responsibility at the city, at the county level, at Sparks, How do you really decipher, hey, that's over at Sparks, that's on you to fund, or that's, something from your planning department? It's still, to me, very unclear who does what. So maybe we can sort of work through that.
If I might, just to respond to those things, probably the best thing you're going to want to hear is that in February, we have our annual retreat. So with 3 new board members, that's our opportunity collectively as a board to really maybe move away from the day-to-day things that we have to do to keep the operation running to the ones that are more strategic. So we're going to have that in February. That'll be the focus of that particular board meeting. Specifically to this request, it's said in general terms, but one of the items, and Paul, maybe you can bring it up, is specifically multimodal. And so what we did is we turned in on behalf of the board a application with the federal government for $50 million to address micromobility and mobility in general. So it doesn't say that specifically here, but the term is covered in one of our priorities. And that's part of what, as we work as an organization, you understand how we work, we can obviously adjust it, but there are, like every organization, there's legacy ways of doing things that may not be so obvious.
Right.
And that's part of what we'll talk about at the retreat, and certainly we'll spend as much time as you would like to understand how we operate, but I heard every word you said.
Well, I am a little naive, like what your process is, how that works,
Understood.
So that's why when I see new priorities, I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute, like where did that come from and where are we going? So, but I appreciate it. And I think you've done a really good job, Bill, of just setting a different tone and just wanting to, I know I've worked with you before, so you're very innovative and I love that. So I'm looking forward to February and I appreciate it. So thanks.
Mr. Reese?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sort of have some things to piggyback on the mayor's comments, and I want to sort of direct them through you, Mr. Nelson, and perhaps it'll come back to Mr. Thomas. But, the mayor is right about thinking about innovation, and we're all, as community members, each day engaged in the known world, and also our constituents are oftentimes bringing to us their ideas, right? Or when we travel, like I went to a conference in Kansas City with the city of Reno a couple of weeks ago, and you see things there that you're like, oh, we want to have those things too. And so from a government affairs perspective, I want to first understand, is this report like my opportunity to tell you I would like us to have some higher level conversations with the Federal Highway Administration about what I'm seeing other communities do relative to, and I know this is a very sort of granular thing, but it fits in with Mayor Sheevy's point about innovation. But sometimes we get people who say, look at this streetscape, and there are planters and paint and bollards and different things happening on a street that are that we're not using here. And sometimes what happens is I go to Ms. Koski, our city engineer, and I say, look at this cool picture. I was just there. It's this great parklet taking part of the street. And she says to me, well, we don't really have the connections to the Federal Highway Administration, and we need them, and we want to work with RTC to do this cool thing, right? So I'm sort of asking both at a priority level and at a government affairs level, how do we sort of place our imprimatur on these things? And perhaps it is through the retreat that you're describing in February. But again, I think because I know the good work that you'll do, Mr. Nelson, I'm trying to figure out, is that a government-to-government related contact thing where you're going to go and lobby the Highway Administration to allow us to do some innovation? Does that make sense, what I'm asking? I think you have a unique ability, Mr. Nelson, because you're very good at communicating with people. I love the presentation. I'm trying to figure out, how do I slide my interest in priority levels into this existing framework?
I would say with these federal priorities, a lot of them are still, I guess, a work in progress. There's planning that's still happening on them. And then when it comes to with these priorities, I think more of what we're doing with them is it's a way for us to talk to the feds, especially our federal delegation, to tell them these are the specific priorities that we're looking at, the 6 of them that I talked about at first. These are the top 6 that we're really looking for. And we didn't put them in any order. It's more for if a grant opportunity comes up that fits one of those projects, but maybe not the other ones, then we'll go ahead and we'll apply for that project. So some of these, it's kind of fluid and it's flexible. And when it comes to the specifics in each of these projects, I think that that's still, there's a lot of moving parts still.
Well, and I want to give you a very specific example. There was a group here locally that came to the city of Reno and said, hey, we want to paint a piano keyboard as a crosswalk. And so we thought, well, that's really interesting. You're serving a community of disabled persons who are connecting to the world through music. Piano sidewalk crosswalk seems really cool. So we go to our city folks and we say, hey, we want to do this, can we? And they say, well, no, we're professional engineers. We have to stamp the thing. And the Federal Highway Administration out here is telling us, don't do anything that doesn't look just exactly like this, what we've done for the last 100 years. And here's Mayor Shiva who's saying, hey, we want innovation, creativity, placemaking, all these things. And I know it's a small example, and I don't want to derail the important things that are on this, but I'm trying to identify to you and to my colleagues and to Mr. Thomas that among the priorities that I value are our ability to communicate effectively on a government affairs basis to the federal government and whomever we have to connect with there to make sure that we are able to do those things. Because it's very odd to me that when I go to other cities, they've got rainbow sidewalks and 3D sidewalks, I'm sorry, crosswalks, I used the wrong term there. They've got piano keyboards, and everyone seems to have the cool, nice thing, but we come back here and we find out that no, we don't get to have the nice things. I'm trying to figure out why. And so perhaps, again, we'll get back on track with the very specific parts of your presentation, but you see how they're all related and why I bring it up here rather than in maybe comment 8, which is where the board can demand certain items be thought about for the future. But again, my point is, I like your style, Mr. Nelson, in terms of how you connect with people, and I believe that long term, that we are going to be able to use your skill set to connect with our federal partners to make inroads into things that do matter to us. And this is, I know it's a very granular one, but I hopefully through my examples, you'll see what I'm sort of angling towards and want to see as part of the conversations as we move forward. Mr. Thomas, obviously, we can have those conversations offline.
Thank you. Really quickly. So that reminds me of, it's so true. Why can't we have nice things? It is so true. We go to other cities. We were just in DC and we're like this. And that's where I do think that we have to figure out what the clear message, who does what, because it's still everyone goes like this. It's ridiculous. But one of the things I do want to mention, because I think this is important, because this was really painful for me with Midtown, is we have this beautiful long strip of concrete that just runs down the middle of it. And it was something that I opposed over and over and over and over again. And then I was told that that strip has to go there in order to get that federal funding. And so I know that obviously there's the criteria, but also how do we work through that whenever, I got to be honest with you, I think that that's going to be coming out. And the reason I think it's going to be coming out, so here is the federal government who just wasted probably, I don't know what that cost, I'm going to say hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. And then we're going to take it out because it's hurting the emergency access into the businesses. And then people, this is just what I witness, is that people are running through it like a racetrack to get to the other side of that business. But also, I think we have significant damage to a fire apparatus for having to drive over it, right? But here, again, now we're gonna pull it out. So it's like, that's some of the stuff where I think when we go to our delegation, that we're saying, wait, this doesn't make sense. So let's get the criteria down so we're actually being able to spend that money much more effectively. So like things like that, looking at those things, because I shook my head the entire time throughout that whole process of Midtown. So, and not to like, hey, Paul, let me just throw it onto you. I know
Yeah,
you're
discuss
just,
it with him and
but
find
I
out
do.
why
I
we're
think
doing these
Devin's
things.
right. You're an incredible communicator, and that's why you'll be very successful at this job. So thank you so much. But that's one of my frustrations. So if you can kind of figure out, how those little pain points that get at you on the federal government side, how can we sort of convey that those are issues? So thanks.
Mr. Hartung. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to point out to the new members of our board, that was pre-Paul. Paul was not here when Midtown It's being planned.
That's already standing in that position now.
Yeah, you're in charge. You're in charge of faults, Mr. Nelson. So, you know, even though you were not here, it was pre-Paul.
I'll be the fall guy.
So, Mr. Thomas, let me ask you this, and Mr. Nelson as well. We've established these priorities. We're going to establish some priorities. Let's put it that way. When will you bring it back to us for an update? Will it be every quarter? Will it be, you know, every 6 months? Will it be every year? What's the timing? And the reason I ask that is maybe in those times we can, you know, you in Washington, D.C., as you well know, you have to pick your battles, and you pick the ones you think you're going to win, because you know you give them your priorities, but you know you go in knowing that you're not going to get all your priorities granted. So periodically, it would be good, at least for me as a board member, to hear back and say, okay, these are the things that we discussed. There was an appetite on our federal delegation's part for this, and this, but you know not so much this, and you know, and then you just work it through. It doesn't mean that they get removed from the list. It just means that, you know, I mean, we have to be very strategic about that, in my opinion. Perhaps I'm wrong.
So let me, just from my meeting yesterday, I mean, we chose those projects because they hit different pots of money too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other side of this, is you want to put round pegs in round holes. So that, which gets to a yes. So that's also why this, but I do agree with innovative process and how do we do that. And I think that's a perfect topic for the retreat in February to see how we address that and set forth a plan to move forward on that. Because you're right, there's some cool stuff out there that there's no reason why Reno and Sparks can't be doing it, and Washoe County, for that matter.
Mr. Chairman.
Timing though? Answered the question. Bringing it back, I'm sorry.
So this particular thing that's on your agenda today, we do annually.
I'm just talking about an update.
Yeah, right. So I was just going to walk through, like, what does this mean? You vote on this today, what does it mean? The ideal would be that we take this forward, we get all those things done. So you'd never hear again other than reports like, here's where we're progressing on the design. That's how you would get the information. If something happens at an inflection point where one of our priorities has been side railed or it can't be feasible, we would obviously bring that back and talk about it and see if there's a plan B or some other option. But we can certainly do quarterly reports on the priorities. Our goal would be to have constant communication because so many of these things are fluid. And as been referenced here, the biggest challenge for us, and I think the state also, is we have a federal partner that asks for our input, but is at a different level of discussion. And so that's our challenge, is how do we feed up, you know, from the bottom, what people are experiencing into a process that is, I guess I would describe as very massive and easy to get lost. So this list really is our clarity. So when we work our way up to that federal process, we're all saying the same thing. We're all rowing in the same direction. It doesn't mean we can't change, you know, different boats or go different directions, but that's really the goal of this. So we will do this annually unless you tell us to do it, but we'll report back. I'll make a promise quarterly to give you a report in, you know, it may be that it's still the same and nothing's progressed, but we'll let you know.
Just, you know, and it can even be in my opinion, it can even be in the director's report, where you just say, here's where we are on these things, and just give us an update so that we kind of know and it doesn't get sort of lost in the shuffle, at least for me.
Okay. Anyone else? Yep.
Yes, thank you. Just a few clarifications. So on the Vision Zero Truckee Meadows improvements, is that the micromobility that you highlighted, Bill, or are you saying micromobility is within each of these new priorities? Because I know that that's also being looked at by RTC.
Yeah, the Vision Zeros one, that's the one where we're looking at things specifically that'll make things safer for the pedestrians and the cyclists in the high crash areas. And then if you look at the other three new ones that we've added, I think there's also Mount Rose Highway. They've got some like trails that they're looking at along there. And then Sun Valley Boulevard, they want to make that a lot more safe for all the pedestrians that are on there too.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you for that. And then one thing I didn't think of with the Mount Rose Highway as we're moving forward with the federal discussions, the Tahoe discussions are, how do we ensure less vehicle miles traveled in the basin, the Tahoe Basin? And part of that is figuring out how do we have better shuttle service from Reno up to Tahoe so vehicles aren't even getting into Tahoe. And so hopefully that can be also part of the improvement discussion as well. Thank you.
They're out of sight. Okay. I'm looking for a motion then to accept the.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? See none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, let's move on to reports. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to start today by congratulating Denise Thompson. January 2nd marks Denise's 15th anniversary at RTC. She spent most of her time as the Executive Office Administrator and Clerk to the Board. She recently started a new position as our Procurement and Contracts Analyst. And I would say that in my discussions with our team internally that there's been some great advances, and in great part because of Denise's efforts in the world of procurement and how we manage getting projects out. And as the board said, getting more of that federal money, part of it is your procurement process. So I'm very proud of her efforts in her new role and how she's done a great job making it look like I'm wise and moving him over to that position. So, so thank you, Denise, for all you've done for all the team at RTC and the board. The RTC has completed the amendment for both of our Ride and Access Flex Ride service contracts. The board authorized me as the executive director to adjust the hourly rates back in our August meetings for services provided by Keolis and MTM. These amendments allowed our providers to respond to unprecedented economic pressures, including inflation, labor costs, supply chain issues, and matters related to the pandemic. These changes were necessary to allow us to continue to meet the transportation needs of our community. We hope these updates will help the efforts of MTM and Keolis to hire and retain employees. Keolis has recently been operating with approximately 88% of its drivers and trainees. It's filled those positions and is training new employees. MTM has been operating about the same percentage. It has 7 openings for drivings. And I would encourage all of you to look into the public transportation report, which is in your packet, and the public can also see that. And you can see the different efforts and strategies to increase employment in those important positions. I would say, I believe right now with Keolis, with all the people who are in training, we'll be close to, if not at 100%, if all those employees follow through on their training and actually become employed. I know it's a constant question from the board and it is critical to our service, so we will do our best to keep you updated frequently. Last week, the RTC held a Stuff a Bus event for food items for those in need. We accepted non-perishable food donations on Thursday, then dropped them off at 2 p.m., or I'm sorry, to Channel 2 News to share your Christmas food drive. That event raised nearly 155,000 pounds of food and more than $338,000 for the Food Bank of Northern Nevada. This is a very worthwhile effort for the community, and we're very happy that our participation will help feed some of the most vulnerable residents in our community. The RTC is expanding its EdPass program to the Desert Research Institute. All DRI facilities, staff, and students who work on DRI's Reno campus have the opportunity to ride on any RTC's fixed route or flex ride transit service for free with a DRI ID card. This service is already in place for students, faculty, and staff at the University of Nevada, Reno and Truckee Meadows Community College using their student IDs. This program has been put in place for more than 3 years, helping to reduce emissions and traffic congestion around our campuses. We always encourage people to use public transit, and this is a very, we hope, impactful way to train people who are integrating into our workforce on the value and availability of public transit. Phase 1 of the Sparks Boulevard project has reached substantial completion 3 months ahead of schedule. The project added roadway capacity, increased safety and accessibility, and improved bicycle and pedestrian facilities between Gregg Street and Lincoln Way. Granite construction crews expected to finish this job in spring, but finished well ahead of schedule. The RTC still has some final striping and punch list items to finish, so the community can still expect some minor lane closures over the next month. We plan on groundbreaking on Phase 2 in 2025, so I know Mayor Lawson was out there with me yesterday with the media, and it was a very important, impactful celebration of opening that Phase 1, which was actually accelerating the project based on availability well ahead of what we had originally decided when we were going to do the whole Sparks Boulevard project. The RTC is asking the community to bring in the new year responsibly. Once again, we're providing free transit from 6 p.m. on New Year's Eve to 2 a.m. on New Year's Day. We know alcohol will be a part of many people's holiday plans. We encourage them to designate a sober driver, use a taxi, take a bus, call a designated driver service, or use a rideshare service. Riding a bus is a safe alternative to driving or walking while impaired. And that concludes my report.
Okay. You have the federal report too? Oh, Paul's going to give us that. Thank you.
Paul Nelson, Government Affairs Officer for RTC Washoe. House Republicans have voted to keep earmarks in place, and that's something that Democrats typically support. That's good news for RTC because we do have some projects coming down the line that we think this could help out with. We're in the process of deciding which projects we want to submit for earmarks for fiscal year 2024. In the fiscal year 2022 budget, there were nearly $10 billion in earmarks and more than 4,400 projects. Last night, Congress also passed a week-long stopgap spending bill. The continuing resolution was set to expire today, so this gives them until next Friday to pass the omnibus bill. The two parties have reached a compromise on overall spending level, so the plan is to take care of it before Christmas. That original the spending, the continued resolution, that was set to expire today, so they've got that one extra week. The U.S. Census Bureau is publishing its new urban boundaries this month. The new data will affect FTA formula funding programs across the country. And the Department of Transportation updated the 2023 raised NOFO this week. The RTC is applying for this funding for the Lemon Drive Phase 2 project. The application deadline is February 28th.
Thank you. NDOT report.
Good morning. It's good to be back. I've missed you guys. I've missed a bunch of meetings in a row, and I apologize, but it's good to be back. As we were having the meeting so far, a whole bunch of things landed up on my page that I'm like, I should talk to you a little bit about that before I get into my actual report. So first up, 3 of you are new, and the other 2 of you that are not new, things have been changing at NDOT over the last 4 years, so I would just like to offer briefings. If you would like us to meet with you to go over anything, please do not hesitate to reach out. I know I spoke with Commissioner Reese at our ribbon cutting a couple days ago, and so we're already working on putting that into place, but happy to go over any of the things, whether it's project specific or how our program comes together or how we can work better together. Please do not hesitate to reach out. The second thing I wanted to mention is on the RTIP. I just wanted to highlight that the bridges, I think there's 3 full bridge replacements that we're working on, but maybe the 4th one also. That is in large part due to the additional bridge funding in IIJA. So we're excited to be able to put that to work. We have the best bridges in the nation, but some of these bridges are bridges that are going to be really hard to do, so that additional $45 million annually from IIJA is going to help us work on these bridges to make sure that our bridges stay the best, but also to make sure that they are safe. And Commissioner Hill, regarding our bridges, we inspect them. The first thing that generally happens if a bridge starts to become a concern is we'll load rate it. And we don't ever want to have to load rate a bridge. But if a bridge starts to become a concern, we'll load rate it. And so then what happens is maybe school buses can't cross it anymore, or emergency vehicles. General public can. We don't want to get there. So that's why we always are working to invest, but those bridges are safe. We'll take them out before we'll let them be unsafe. So, and then the Mount Rose Corridor Study, that study has, I believe, is fully completed. The projects that are coming into the RTIP, or the project Phase 1, is going to be reflective. Commissioner Hartung, it's going to be reflective of the work that we did, and Commissioner Lucy was very closely involved in the work on that corridor study. So while we don't necessarily know specifically what those intersection improvements will look like today, it will be in alignment with the corridor study that we worked with
Commissioner Lucy, on, and it does include my team. If you've caught me texting over here, my team's like, they're giving me all these updates as we're having. So Commissioner Hill, it does include where there was overlap. It does include the scenic byway recommendations. So there's not overlap along the whole corridor, but where there was, they made sure to incorporate those. Another couple things here, the priorities are so important because when there's alignment, we can offer letters of support. And as 40% of this IIJA bill is discretionary funding, which is the largest amount ever, which means we have to compete. And so the team at RTC knows this, but I'm also letting you know, we work together. They ask us for letters of support. We've leaned in and said, it may be an FTA grant, and we don't have any role in FTA, but we understand how critically important transit is. So if a letter of support helps, please ask us. And in doing that and working together, we have brought back significant funding to the state, across the state, not all up here, but there have been a couple of grants that this region has received in the last 3 or 4 years. I think with the bridges, right? The Arlington Bridges received a grant. 395 in Virginia received a grant. So and Lemon. No, Pyramid. And that's through our working together and sharing those priorities. So it's important that we have these conversations. Crosswalks, it's the manual and uniform traffic control devices. The good news on that is there's a committee that's working on updating it. I don't know that it's going to change that, but you're right. Some local agencies across the nation, I think they lean in and say, this is a guideline, we're willing to take the risk. And so it's a leadership, it's a challenge. And I'm an engineer, I feel it. I'm like, oh, you're pushing me out of my box. But in some places, they found that it actually can improve safety in some cases. So it's being willing to have the study, doing the engineering judgment. But I also will say that document is currently in an update, so there may be opportunity to weigh in on the updating of that document. And then lastly, multimodal, it's not, lastly before I get started, multimodal, it's not something I talk about a lot, but one of the things that we've been doing at NDOT is really leaning in and saying, who might we expect to use this corridor? Even if they're not there today, would it, or even if we can't count them because they're not out there in the minute that we're counting, is it a corridor that you'd expect a pedestrian? Is it a corridor that you would expect a cyclist? Is it transit? And how do we make it as safe as we possibly can? I say that because when we have these conversations, there are very much trade-offs. Where RTC, I think, is leading the McCarran study. We're partnering with the RTC. When you have an 8-lane boulevard, arterial street, can you actually create a separated guideway or separated path for the bicyclists? Yes, you can. You may have to take away a lane of traffic. So trying to balance those things, but to the extent that we can, we are leaning in at NDOT, and I know the RTC is part of these conversations and trying to figure out how do we think about the other users that are there and making it safe for them, not just the cars that we readily see and count. So we are leaning in on that space and have been doing it for the last several years. It's just not something we actively talk about. We just want to make sure that we're doing it, right? So just wanted to give you a couple of just feedbacks off the conversations that's been happening. And so you're aware of what we're doing. And again, happy to do any briefings or specific project conversations as applicable and appropriate. All right, so I normally start with safety. I guess good news, we're still down, compared to last year. Last year was the worst in 15, so 2 to 3% increase since last year isn't necessarily fantastic news. And of course, if you're related or knew any one of those 348 people that has lost their lives through December 5th, it has not been a good year if you're related. So we're almost at 3% better than last year. Again, last year was the worst in 15. Last year we continued to see, or last month we continued to see an increase in bicycle fatalities. They were up by 83%, and this month they're up by 85%. This is largely due to a staggering increase in bicycle fatalities in Clark County, from 5 last year to 13 this year. But if we want to talk specifically about Washoe County, through the last several months, we've been seeing a downward trend in Washoe County fatalities over the past several months. Unfortunately, at the beginning of December, so through November, it has now come to an equal point. So 40 lives, which is exactly what was through November of last year. It's equal in Washoe County. 40 lives have been lost due to traffic crashes. One increase we've seen in Washoe County is unrestrained or unbuckled motorists. It's up 33% from 6 unbuckled deaths last year to 8 this year. And this is one of those things that I really just don't understand because almost all of us sitting up here, seatbelts have been, and maybe all of us, I don't know when it exactly went in, seatbelts have been required in new cars. And so we grew up with seatbelts. What? I said almost. I started with almost. I started with almost. But maybe.
He just threw his arm across me and said, "This was our seatbelt as a kid." Can't tell you how many times.
Right. But by and large today, I mean, the majority of the population has grown up with seatbelts, so I don't understand. This is something that's so easy, and every new vehicle sold today, just put it on. It's the easiest thing we can do to reduce fatalities is wear our seatbelts, the absolutely easiest. Bicyclist fatalities in Washoe County are down 100%, which is fantastic, and so are pedestrian fatalities are down 11. But I just want to remind everyone as we go through the busy holiday season to remember to think about everybody who's out on the road with you. The holiday season is super fun and festive. It can include imbibing, don't drive if you're impaired. It can also include a lot of stress and you're panicked and you're frantic and you're just worried about doing the next thing. Take a deep breath. Don't bring that into the car with you. Remember, there's a lot of other people out there that are in the same position as you, and everybody wants to get home to their family at the end of the day. All right, some project updates. This, I don't think it's going to be quite the last update. Neoma, Commissioner Jardin asked me when we approved this project back in December of 2019, she said, I want monthly updates. And so we have provided monthly updates. And this one is, I don't know that we're going to continue doing monthly, but we will likely do periodic still because there's still some punch list items on this. But on Wednesday, we were able to celebrate substantial completion of the SBX project, the first phase of our overall Spaghetti Bowl project. That project consists of 5 phases. It's overall going to be more than $2 billion project. But the first phase, SBX, has been completed. Just a couple of things that we did. We have, in this project, widened the eastbound I-80 to southbound 580 Spaghetti Bowl ramp from 1 to 2 lanes. That opened last week. Constructed new braided ramp to carry 2nd Street traffic entering southbound 580 over Mill, over the Mill Street off-ramp, helping to reduce that weave that was so dangerous before. So we've reduced and made that a safer movement. We've added auxiliary merge lanes on southbound 580 between Spaghetti Bowl and Plum. Again, one of those really frantic, every time I drove through there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong lane, I gotta move over. So we've added some additional auxiliary, a little more space along there. We widened and improved 6 bridges and constructed 1 new exit ramp to accommodate additional lanes and ramps and enhance mobility and safety. And I'm glad that some of you were able to join us, 4 of you were able to join us on Wednesday to be part of that. I'm glad that we've been able to work together. The RTC contributed, was it $30 million to the project to ensure that it got done. It got done ahead of schedule. We do still have some striping that needs to go out, some permanent striping. Some of the aesthetic treatments aren't out there yet. There's going to be some incredible tribal sculptures that are coming in the coming months. But we've had some supply chain issues. So traffic construction speed limits are still posted, so please drive safe through the area. We'll make sure to let everyone know, as we have been, when there are going to be intermittent closures, whether it's for striping or other things. But by and large, substantial completion has been hit on this project, and we were excited to be able to do the ribbon cutting. I think one of the highlights was the Powwow Club, the dancers. And having the Reno Sparks Indian Colony there. They've been a huge part of the partnership and really leaned in with us as we developed the corridor-specific landscape and aesthetics. So it was a great event. So thank you for those of you who were able to attend, and thank you for everybody who's been driving through and been patient with us as we've delivered this project. Construction is one of those things, it's like the tearing off of the Band-Aid, right? The construction isn't the fun part, it's when it's done and you're able to drive and see the benefits of it and have a safer, more reliable corridor to use. So thank you. All right, looking ahead to next year, I have, I think, like 5 things, because when we close up something, you're like, well, what's next? And so I just want to tell you a few of the things that are coming. So next year we're launching, so in 2023, we're launching the next phase of the US 395 improvements between North McCarran and Golden Valley Road. It will include adding 1 lane to southbound 395 between McCarran and Golden Valley and additional auxiliary or merge lanes between the exits. We'll also be constructing a braided freeway ramp along northbound 395 between Panther Valley on and Golden Valley off, I believe, for smoother traffic flow. So 395, the first phase of our 395 is coming this year. As we do that, we're also working on Pyramid Highway to Spanish Springs, and RTC, you're very familiar because you led the environmental process for the project. We got a federal grant to deliver this project, and for those who aren't as familiar, this project will widen approximately 1.5 miles of Pyramid from Queen to Los Altos Parkways from 4 to 6 lanes. It will reconstruct 1 mile of existing 4-lane from Los Altos to Golden View Drive, and it will also provide a 10-foot protected shared use path and 5-foot bike lanes from Queen to Golden View Drive. So leaning in and trying to make sure that it's safe for everyone who's using the corridor. And further south, we are going to be overlaying the aging and cracking surface of 580 south of the current Spaghetti Bowl project, so between Villanova and Peckham. And it's not part of the Spaghetti Bowl improvements, but you will see that work as we start wrapping up the Spaghetti Bowl. When you drive that corridor, that concrete is all cracked, and we're going to work on fixing that. On Mount Rose Highway, we're adding median concrete turn islands and eastbound right turn lane on Mount Rose at Callahan. The median islands will also be reconfigured to provide additional protection for turns between the highway and Edmonton Drive. There will be a protected 10-foot wide paved shared use path constructed between Thomas Creek and Edmonton on the highway's south side to provide additional safety and access for the folks that are biking and walking along that corridor. And there actually are a lot of them. If you're driving, you don't see them, but they're there. And then in West Reno, in the Verdi area, we're going to improve roadside drainage and barrier rail, as well as beautify both directions of I-80 from Keystone to the state line. We're going to be installing new landscaping to portray native wildlife and plants of the Truckee Meadows consistent with existing I-80 landscaping through downtown. And next year will be the final year in improving the Incline Village area highways. So that's been a hard project. We've had to do it just during the summers. We're 2 years in. Next year will be the final year of that project. So we have a lot coming in the area, and beyond that, as we just approved, or as you approved in the amendment, there's even more to come. Really working to make sure that everyone up here in this part of the state can get to where they want to go safely and reliably. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chair. Normally I don't comment on these, but I do. Just an observation, as I've worked in this position for the last couple of years, I would say the norm is that on these big federal projects that have federal money involved, that they're over budget. So when we kind of pass through these, and this is a thanks to Director Swallow and her team, I would just like to highlight for our community and for everybody up here that when we say on budget, that's not the norm. That's not what frequently happens. If anything, when I deal with some of these regional agencies, they're used to projects going way over budget. And so the way they react is based on what they see more often than not. So I just wanted to note that not only is that project significant and big for our community, but also being on budget is significantly important.
And on time. Okay. Let's move on to commissioner announcements and updates. Do we have any announcements or updates? No? Any future topics? I think we covered most of those earlier. All right, we'll go to public comment. Donna Klontz again. You're back. You have some new news from your meeting.
I've been outside in the lobby. It's cold in there, so I still have my coat on, listening to the meeting. It's hard. Donna Klontz, for the record. It's hard by doing all these things at once. Anyway, last few things. I live in Northwest Reno near the McQueen High School, and so I drive on Route 4 bus line all the time. On my way to doing our info fair the other day, I saw this elderly gentleman in a wheelchair at one of the bus stops, uncovered bus stop, in the snow, covered in blankets, but there waiting for the bus. And a lady had stopped to help him, to try to get him to ride with her, but he wouldn't go. I could see they were talking, and she was friendly and all that kind of thing. So I was thinking, I don't know, is there a way to put solar heaters in the bus stop spaces that actually have roofs and sides. There was one about a block and a half further down toward McCarran that he could have been in, but being in a wheelchair, I'm sure he came from just across the street in the apartments that are there. So I'll see if I can find out about that. Second thing, AB 10 is pending for next year's session, and I don't know if y'all are following that one yet, but I saw it, and because I care both about transportation and housing, Vegas is wanting to create what they're calling transportation and housing reinvestment zones, and it allows the cities to decide whether or not they want to do this. So I'm asking if Reno and Sparks and RTC are interested in taking a look at this thing to see if it makes sense for Washoe County, because I think we could use whatever we can possibly get to enhance what we're doing right now. Last thing is listening to all of you talking about innovation coming up in the future. We in the senior community would love to participate in that as well. Expanding Flex Ride as soon as you can is one of our biggest things because it's working. It's wonderful for folks to be able to call and have that small van show up and take them where they need to go here in the county at the rates that we do with the big buses. I know that it's hard to get the drivers. You've got the vehicles, but you can't hire drivers. And I don't know this either, but I will look into it myself. Is there a way to partner with the school district on the bus drivers that have all their licensing and everything, and even maybe use some of their buses at the school district to get folks around during the middle of the day when the bus drivers, many of them, are not running kids back and forth to school? They have vehicles, they have trained folks. Maybe there's a way to have them do part-time work for RTC if that's allowed under all of the various contracts that you have. But I know we've got ways to, we've got the resources, but they're not connecting. So anything you can do. And then the last thing is, it's wonderful that you've found a way to get the kids on the buses for free from colleges. How can we do that for seniors? Free on the buses. Whatever grants you did, please let's look at that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Don. Commissioner Hartung?
I'd like to open up 8 again, Mr. Chairman, and the reason
I'd like to take a vote.
The reason is you're not agendized to vote on that, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Spear, would you explain to him he's not agendized to take a vote on that? But I digress. To Ms. Clance's point, Spanish Springs, there's a huge need out there for Flex Ride, and it would be great to look at expanding those boundaries. Sparks is growing by the day. Unincorporated is growing by the day, and there's a real need. And a lot of what we're seeing in those areas are retirees. There's a lot of retirees coming in, and so I think it would behoove us to look at what it would take to expand those boundaries out into the Spanish Springs area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
And Mr. Chairman, to piggyback on Commissioner Hartung's point, I would just say also the Washoe Valley should be looked at. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything back under item 8? We go back to 1.2. Just kidding. We're down to my favorite topic, adjournment.